Welcome to the Witchy Work Wishes podcast, a place to find your weekly inspiration for bringing your personal witchcraft practice into your business, work, and office. Welcome back to Witchy Work Wishes. We are on episode 201 today. Last week we gathered around our little campfire and celebrated 200 episodes together. And I would love to say thank you one more time. Whether you've been with me since episode 1 or just found your way to our little corner of the world last week, thank you. Really thank you for walking this path with me. Reaching 200 conversations together wasn't just my milestone. It really belongs to all of us. And now here we are, episode 201. And this feels like a beginning. It's the morning after the party when the fire has burned down to those glowing embers and we pour ourselves another cup of coffee, lace up our boots and wonder, where shall we wander to today? Well, as this episode airs, I am arriving home from my annual trip up to the mountains. Every year I make my pilgrimage to my little cabin tucked away high in the eastern Sierras. And I know it does sound like a vacation, and in some way, shape, or form it is, but really it's more. These mountains have become part of my spiritual practice, a place where I remember who I am, a place where life slows down enough that I can hear my own thoughts again. I always come home feeling a little different than when I left, too. And not because something dramatic happened, although, I don't know, the mountains usually have a way of sprinkling a little unexpected magic into every visit. Really because I spend those days walking. Not walking to get anywhere, just walking. Walking beneath towering pines, beside rushing creeks, walking through meadows filled with wildflowers. Although really by August, many of them have already run their course. But walking quietly enough that deer don't notice me at first. Walking until the rhythm of my footsteps become my heartbeat. And, somewhere along those trails, of course, I started thinking about all of us. Because I don't think walking is just something witches do. I think there is a kind of witch who becomes something entirely different because she walks. So today, I would love to introduce you to the walking witch. Now, normally this is where I would insert a little bit of general housekeeping notes, but since I'm on my way home right now, it won't work. This is airing on Wednesday, August 19th for everyone, but our Patreon family does get the early drop on Sunday mornings. And on Sunday morning, I will be enjoying one more cup of coffee in the mountains before packing up the car for the drive home. So I'm going to hold on to the what's happening in my little corner of the world section for now. I know I'm going to have a bunch of things to share with you next week. Oh, but you know what? Actually, real quick, I do. I do have a little story I can share. Something that happened just before I left for the mountains. You all know about my hearth and hen ladies, right? My 5 moon phase hens in the backyard. They have a pretty elaborate little setup. There are actually 3 different sections to their space. The first is the main hen house with their nesting boxes, roosting perches, fluffy hay sections, where they settle in every evening. And it has one of those automatic doors that opens at 6:30 every morning and closes at 8:30 every night, at least while our summer days are nice and long right now. That opens to a secure outside run. It's a covered run with sand on the ground. And then there is an additional space. There's a little tunnel that leads to like a larger covered outdoor area with pine shavings, a corner little dust bath area, their fresh food, fresh water, all of the big mountain branches that I have brought home over the years that they like to perch on outside. That third area is mostly secure-ish, but the little wild birds can still sneak in. So can the scrub jays. To say my backyard wildlife bird family is healthy would be a huge understatement because they are all helping themselves to the chicken's food, vitamins, and fresh water every single day. Okay, you guys also know that last year I lost my German Shepherd. While he was in the yard, nothing else came in. Well, other than the wild birds. But after he passed, something changed. The alley cats started showing up. Now, at first, I was not thrilled about this because they were going after the chickens. But I get it, right? I get it. 5 fluffy little bantam silkies probably look like a pretty tempting meal, but that's not going to happen. Now, my girls are used to coming out into the yard a couple of times a day to, scratch around, graze, just kind of putter about the yard. But now, whenever they're outside, I have to physically be like right next to them. I have to keep one eye on the hens, one eye on the alley cats that would love to attack and eat them, and another eye on the neighborhood hawk that occasionally decides to stop by and see what's on the menu. But here's where it gets interesting. Before the cats showed up, all the alley cats, my backyard was absolutely overrun with gophers. Like, absolutely overrun. Even inside the third chicken run, they had tunnels everywhere because, unlike the other 2 sections, it doesn't have buried wire underneath. The gophers quickly figured out they had an all-you-can-eat buffet of chicken food. Apparently, everyone in my backyard was well fed. The hens, the wild birds, and the gophers. Well, not anymore. These alley cats have been working overtime. There are about 5 different ones that visit pretty regularly, and I've gotten to where I can, tell each of them apart. They have absolutely cleaned house, you guys. Now, I can't say the gophers are completely gone, but I'd guess we're down by at least, I don't know, 90%. So the cats and I have reached an understanding. I will leave out fresh water for them, which, naturally has turned into food as well. And in return, they leave my chickens alone and focus on the gophers instead. So far, everyone has honored the agreement. Now, my guess is none of these cats have been spayed or neutered, so I may have some planning to do here in the near future. If I can catch them before kittens start arriving, I would really love to trap them, get them fixed through a local rescue or shelter, and then release them back here. They really have, though, become a part of this little backyard hearth and hen community. So, anyways, the reason for the story. I was outside with the ladies yesterday for about 45 minutes. It was a really nice long afternoon outing. When I noticed Izzy, my sweet special needs chicken, looked like she had something stuck to her beak. She kept kind of rubbing her beak on the grass, but whatever it was wouldn't come off. So, of course, I walked over to help her. Only it wasn't stuck. She was holding onto it, and it wasn't a blade of grass or a little bug like I expected. It was a gopher leg. Oh my goodness. She was running around the yard looking so unbelievably proud of herself, like she'd just, I don't know, won the lottery or something. Of course, I took it away from her. I was like, Izzy, oh my goodness, girl, no, this is not for you. But she just looked back at me completely confused. Like, what? What do you mean? Like, I found this. Oh my goodness. So, life continues to be wonderfully busy out in the backyard. The hens are happy, the wild birds are thriving, the gopher population has dramatically declined, and the alley cats and I seem to have reached a peaceful little agreement. As long as everyone remembers exactly what can and can't be hunted, I think we're going to get along just fine. And before we jump into today, I would love to give a special thank you to one of our own Hearth and Hen family members. This episode actually came from a topic suggestion during one of our live gatherings, and the moment I heard it, I just knew there was something special here. So thank you. Thank you for planting this little seed. I have a feeling you thought you were simply suggesting a podcast, but I believe you may have started a whole new practice for many of us. I absolutely love when these episodes come from our community because it just reminds me that Witchy Work Wishes has never really just been my podcast. It's our conversations, our curiosity, our questions, our stories. And together we get to continue exploring this beautiful path of witchcraft, one episode at a time. So thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. If you can, lace up your boots, fill your water bottle, maybe grab your walking stick if you have one, or, even better, your staff. Because today we are not just talking about the walking witch. We are going to become one. And whether you're listening while you're out on a trail right now, strolling through your neighborhood, maybe wandering on a quiet beach, or simply sitting with a cup of tea imagining the path beneath your feet, you are exactly where you need to be. So take a slow breath and come walk with me. So, what exactly is a walking witch? Well, first, I don't think it's somebody who just simply enjoys hiking. And don't get me wrong, I love a good hike. I love getting out into the mountains, climbing over rocks and reaching beautiful destinations. But that's not what I'm talking about today. A walking witch could be hiking through an ancient forest or strolling around the neighborhood after dinner. They could be wandering along a beach, following a dirt road, walking through a city park, or even making the same familiar loop around their own backyard. It isn't where someone walks that makes them a walking witch. I think it's how they walk. A walking witch believes every path has something to teach. They understand that magic isn't always found at the destination. Sometimes it's actually found in the rhythm of the footsteps, in the space between one breath and the next, with the bird that suddenly lands nearby, the feather resting on the trail, the mushroom that was not there yesterday, or in the tree that just is asking them to stop for a quick moment. A walking witch walks with eyes open, walks with curiosity, and walks in relationship with the world around them. And because of that, every walk becomes a conversation. I think we've forgotten that walking has always been sacred. Long before we had cars and paved roads and fitness watches counting our steps, people walked simply because it was how life was lived. They walked to gather food, visit neighbors, reach markets, gather at holy places, and really to tend to the land that cared for them in return. Every healer, wise one, and herbalist walked. Every village witch walked. They knew where the elderberries ripened first. They knew which stream ran the coldest during the heat of the summer. They knew where the hawks nested, where the mushrooms appeared after a rainstorm, and which trees always held on to their leaves just a little bit longer than the other ones did. They didn't learn those things from books. They learned them because they returned again and again, season after season, year after year. To me, that's the heart of the walking witch. Not someone who walks farther than everyone else, not someone who conquers mountains, but someone who pays attention. Someone who allows every step to become a part of their practice. Because every path that we walk does change us a little bit, whether we notice it or not. A walking witch simply chooses to notice. If we think about it, walking has always been a part of humanity's spiritual journey. Long before there were churches on every corner, before there were temples and retreat centers or even, books to study, there were simply people walking across the land. And while they may not have called themselves walking witches, I think they just generally understood, something that we have little by little forgotten. Movement changes us. And there is something that happens when our feet begin moving and our minds begin quieting. Questions just kind of seem to soften. Answers sometimes arrive without being forced. And we notice things that we would have driven right past. That's why, throughout history, so many spiritual traditions have included walking as part of their practice. Take sacred journeys, for example. People traveled on foot to sacred places for thousands of years. Some walked hundreds of miles to holy wells, mountain shrines, temples, cathedrals. The destination mattered, of course, but those who completed a pilgrimage of sorts often said the real transformation happened somewhere along the road. Each step became a prayer, each mile became a type of offering. By the time they arrived, they weren't the same person who had begun the journey. And I like that. It's a good little reminder for us, which is sometimes the magic is not waiting at the end. It's what's happening while we are still walking. Our own magical ancestors understood this too. Cunning folk, wise women, village healers of Europe didn't stay tucked away in little cottages waiting for people to come knocking on the door. They walked, right? They walked from village to village, carrying remedies and blessings and charms and practical wisdom. They learned the land so intimately that they knew which meadow held healing yarrow, where the mugwort grew each summer, and which trees offered shade during the hottest afternoons. Their knowledge was not gathered all at once. It was gathered one walk at a time. And then, of course, we have our hedge witches, right? And we talked about hedge witches before on the podcast. And while the hedge often represents crossing between the physical and spiritual worlds, it's easy to forget that real hedgerows were incredibly magical places. They were the borders between cultivated fields and that wild unknown. Those hedgerows became living pharmacies, really, filled with elder and hawthorn, blackberry, nettle, wild roses, mushrooms, uh, insects and birds, and just countless medicinal herbs. Imagine walking those winding paths every single day. You would see it, right? You would notice which flowers opened first in spring, which berries ripened the earliest, which mushrooms appeared after a warm rain, and, of course, which birds returned before the others. And it wasn't just observation, like that was a relationship. We have another beautiful tradition, labyrinth walking. Unlike a maze, a labyrinth only has one path. There are no tricks, there's no dead ends, there's no wrong turns. You simply follow the winding path inward and eventually outward again. For centuries, people have walked labyrinths as a moving meditation. Instead of trying to quiet the mind by, sitting still, they let each step become a prayer. They walk with grief, gratitude, difficult decisions. I think people sometimes walk with hope. And I'm sure, just like today, the answers didn't always arrive, but peace often did. Walking as a spiritual practice isn't unique to witchcraft. You find it in Buddhist walking meditations, where every step is taken with complete awareness. You'll find it in Christian pilgrimages that have, crossed Europe for centuries. You'll find it with indigenous people who have walked the same ancestral paths for generations, knowing every bend in the river, every sacred rock, every change in the seasons. I think you'll find it almost everywhere humans have lived in relationship with the land, because somewhere along the way, our ancestors discovered something pretty simple. Earth teaches best at walking speed. And maybe that's exactly why witches have always walked. So if this sounds inviting to you, and you would like to become a walking witch, I think it starts before we ever take the first step. Most of us walk with a destination in mind, right? We walk to get somewhere, or we walk for exercise so we can burn calories. We walk because our watch buzzed us and told us we haven't moved enough today. And there's nothing wrong with those reasons. I use them. But I believe a walking witch walks for relationship. Before I step onto a trail, I pause, take a deep breath, and that's it. Just something to remind myself that this is not simply another walk. This is part of my practice. And then I begin. One of the easiest ways to become present is through your feet. Feel them meeting the earth. Notice the texture beneath you. Is it, soft pine needles, gravel, sand, fallen leaves, worn pavement? Is the soil damp after a rain, or is it super dry and dusty? With every step, imagine roots extending from the soles of your feet into the earth below, not to hold you in place, but to remind you that you belong here. Grounding doesn't always happen by standing still, right? Sometimes it does happen while we are moving. Another practice I love is matching my breath to my footsteps. Maybe I inhale for 4 steps and exhale for 4 steps. There's no perfect rhythm here. I'm just giving an example. Your body will definitely find its own pace. But after a few minutes, something pretty cool happens. You slow your breathing a little bit more. Your shoulders drop and soften. Your thoughts become quieter. It's almost like your body remembers a rhythm that it has always, always known. Then comes the hard part, or it's a hard part for me, walking without an agenda. As witches, we're often asking questions, aren't we? What does this mean? What should I do? Can someone Please send me a sign. I do it. I'm sure you do it too. And that's all good. But every once in a while, just leave the questions at home. Instead of searching for messages, become available to receive them. There's a big difference with that. Searching usually narrows our focus. Receiving opens it. And you know what? Maybe nothing extraordinary happens. Maybe the gift is simply noticing how sunlight filters through the trees. Maybe it's the smell of sagebrush warming in the afternoon sun. Maybe it's hearing birds you didn't even realize had been singing the whole time. And sometimes something does happen. A hawk circles overhead, a butterfly lands nearby, a deer steps out quietly from behind the trees. You find a feather resting perfectly on a path. A heart-shaped stone catches your eye. A mushroom appears after last night's rain. Or maybe you notice the perfect walking stick lying beside the trail. Not because it was placed there by magic, but because for the very first time you were present enough to see it. Nature has been speaking, right? She always is. I keep saying she leaves breadcrumbs, but it's true. The notes and messages are there. We simply don't always slow down enough to listen. That said, one thing I would encourage is to not immediately turn every encounter into an omen. Not every crow is a message from the gods. Not every feather means an angel has visited. Sometimes a crow is simply being a crow, and a deer is simply living its beautiful little deer life. A mushroom appeared because the conditions were just right. I mean, there's magic in that too, right? You guys know what I mean. When we stop trying to force meaning into every experience, I think something unexpected happens. We begin appreciating the world for what it is instead of what we want it to tell us. Ironically, that's often when the messages do actually arrive. Oh, before we move on, I want to talk about walking sticks real quick. Now, some people think of a walking stick is just something for balance, and it does help with that. As I've gotten older, especially when I'm hiking up the mountains, I learned to appreciate having a little extra support on uneven trails. My knees appreciate it, my back appreciates it, and really, it just gives me the confidence to explore places I might otherwise avoid. But to a witch, a walking stick can become so much more. For thousands of years, staffs and walking sticks have been symbols of wisdom, guidance, and really the journey itself. Shepherds carried staffs, pilgrims carried staffs, travelers carried staffs. Druids, wise women, healers, and wanderers were often imagined with one in hand. It wasn't just a tool, it became a part of who they were. You might remember in our Witch of the Woods episode, I shared that I'm hoping to find the perfect fallen branch in the mountains to become my own staff. Not cut from a living tree, but really gifted by the forest when the time is right. And that's exactly what I'm talking about here. I think there's something beautiful about allowing a walking stick to choose you. Rather than buying one, keep your eyes open while you're out and about. Maybe one day you'll notice a fallen branch lying beside the trail. Not broken from a living tree, but, one that has already completed its own journey and now seems ready to begin another one with you. Pick it up, walk with it, see how it feels in your hand. Does it fit your stride? Does it feel balanced? Does it simply feel right? Over time, that walking stick begins collecting stories. It remembers the mountains that you've climbed and the forest you've wandered, the beaches you've explored, and the difficult seasons you've walked through. Every scratch and every little smooth place worn by your hand, every mark becomes part of your own story. Some witches, of course, decorate their staffs with leather cords and feathers and crystals and carvings or, charms that they've collected over the years. Others leave them exactly as they were found, allowing the beauty of the wood to, kind of speak for itself. Neither is more magical than the other because the magic is not in the stick. The magic is in every mile you've walked with it. And maybe that's why witches have carried staffs for so many centuries. Not because they needed something to lean on. Maybe it's because every journey deserves a witness. Okay, before we jump into some practical ways to become a walking witch, I want to share something that happened to me recently. I was flying to Chicago to visit my boys, and while I was waiting at the airport to, board my flight, I wandered into one of those little airport bookstores. And you know how they always have books about the local area? Well, sitting there was this beautiful hiking guide filled with the trails and walks, and not in some faraway place, but like right here in my own backyard. I picked it up and I started, flipping through the pages, and I could not believe how many places there were that I had never explored. Some were literally like a little tiny short drive from my house. Others I'd driven past countless times without even knowing there was a trail just beyond the road. And there in the airport, I had one of those little moments where something shifts inside you. I realized I've been waiting until I could get back to the mountains, waiting for my annual trip, waiting for the big adventure, for that place where I feel closest to nature. And then it hit me like, what am I doing? Why am I waiting? Yes, absolutely. I love the mountains. They will always feel like home to me. But nature didn't stop existing the moment I drove back from them, right? There are trails and hillsides and creeks and beaches and oak trees and little pockets of wilderness all around me, right at my home. So I bought the book. And you know what? I've already gone on two of the walks. Well, I don't know. They're probably more like little hikes and walks, but hey, I did it. I took the first step. And that's really what today's episode is all about. Not waiting until life is perfect, right? Not waiting until you have a week off. Not waiting until you can travel somewhere magical. Just walk. Does not have to be on a trail or up a hill, just head out and walk. So I did. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized something else. It's funny how modern science keeps discovering things our ancestors probably knew from experience. Today, we have studies telling us that walking helps lower stress, it supports heart health, it improves sleep, it strengthens our muscles and joints, it helps regulate blood sugar, boosts creativity, it even improves memory. Researchers have found that spending time walking in nature lowers blood pressure, calms our nervous system, and reduces anxiety. I don't think our ancestors needed a scientific study to tell them that. I think they simply noticed. They noticed that after a walk, they felt lighter. They thought more clearly. They slept more deeply. Their worries didn't disappear, but somehow they came a little easier to carry. And maybe that's because our bodies were never designed to spend all day sitting under artificial lights, staring at screens, and rushing from one responsibility to the next. Maybe we were designed to move through the world, to feel the wind, hear the birds, notice the changing seasons, and remember that we belong to the earth, not just to our calendars. One thing I have certainly noticed as I've gotten older is that my body reminds me that I'm not 20 anymore. My knees occasionally have opinions, my back sometimes lets me know when I've overdone it, and my energy isn't always what it used to be. But I can honestly tell you this. I don't think I've ever come home from a walk and thought, man, I wish I hadn't have done that. I've come home tired. I've come home muddy with sore legs, but I've also come home calmer, more peaceful and grateful. Somehow a little bit more like myself. Because walking is not just exercise. It's one of the oldest forms of healing that we've ever known. As witches, we spend so much time looking for magical herbs, meaningful rituals, beautiful crystals, and powerful spells, and all of those have their place. But maybe one of the oldest spells available to us has always been this simple: step outside. Put one foot in front of the other and let the earth do what it's been doing for thousands of years. Help us remember who we are. Okay, let's do this together. Let's become a walking witch. And guess what? The beautiful thing is, you don't need a mountain. You don't need an ancient forest. You don't even need a vacation or perfectly planned afternoon. You just need a pair of comfortable shoes and the willingness to pay attention. One of the easiest places to begin is with what I call the 5-minute witch walk. This is for those busy days when life feels like it's moving at 100 miles an hour. Simply step outside and walk for 5 minutes. Leave your phone in your pocket, skip the music and the podcasts. Instead, challenge yourself to notice 5 things you've never noticed before. Maybe it's a flower growing through a crack in the sidewalk, a bird you've never seen in your neighborhood, the smell of blooming jasmine, the shape of a cloud, or I don't know, the way the evening light falls across your street. It's amazing how 5 mindful minutes can completely change the direction of your day. And don't underestimate your own neighborhood for this one or your own local park. Silence isn't really the absence of sound. It's, the absence of all the noise inside of us. Now, you guys know I love a good moonwalk. Step outside beneath whatever moon is waiting for you. A brilliant full moon, a delicate crescent moon, or even the dark moon when the stars seem like just brighter than ever. Walk without rushing, though. Notice how differently the world feels at night. The familiar suddenly becomes mysterious. The ordinary feels just a little more magical. Moonlight has this beautiful way of reminding us that not everything needs to be fully illuminated to be beautiful. I also love taking a gratitude walk. Instead of thinking about everything that still needs to be done, simply name something you are grateful for. It could be something big like your family or your health, or something wonderfully ordinary like your morning coffee, the comfortable shoes you have on right now, or maybe it's the breeze against your face. By the time you return home, you'll often discover that gratitude has shifted your entire perspective. Now, sometimes life does ask something different from us. Sometimes what we need is not gratitude, it's space to grieve. A grief walk isn't about fixing sadness or really trying to feel better. It's simply giving yourself permission to carry your grief while the earth carries you. Walk with the memory of somebody you've lost. Walk after disappointment. Walk through a difficult season. Walk with tears if they come. The earth has witnessed grief far longer than we have. Like it knows how to hold it. There's also a question walk. Before you leave home, write down one question, just one, and tuck it into your pocket and go for a walk. Resist the urge to solve it. Don't analyze it. Don't rehearse conversations in your head. Simply carry the question with you. Walk, observe, breathe. Maybe the answer comes before you get home, and maybe it doesn't. But almost every time you'll return with a different relationship to the question than when you left. And sometimes that's actually the answer that you needed. So we also have a gathering walk. This one is fun because it really isn't about collecting as much as you can. It's about noticing what the earth chooses to offer. As you walk, keep your eyes open for little treasures that are already waiting for you. A fallen feather, an interesting stone, an acorn, a pine cone, a piece of shed bark, maybe a shell if you're walking along the beach, or a fallen branch that seems to be asking to come home with you. The important part is that we never take from a living plant or disturb the place we're visiting, right? We simply receive the gifts that have already been given. Over time, these little treasures become wonderful additions to your altar or whatever you're doing, your seasonal decorations, your spell work, your grimoire. Even if they never become part of your magical workings, they'll always remind you of the place where you found them and the walk that brought them into your life. I like to think of these little finds as souvenirs from conversations with nature. They aren't valuable because they're rare, they're valuable because they helped us pay attention. Another way to practice is by taking an elemental walk. Instead of trying to notice everything, spend your entire walk focusing on just one element. Maybe today it's an earth walk. Feel the ground beneath your feet. Notice the stones, the roots, the trees, the mountains, the moss, the rich smell of the soil. Tomorrow might be an air walk. Listen for birds. Feel the wind against your face. Notice the clouds, the scents drifting through the air, and the way the breeze just carries seeds and leaves from one place to another. Another day it could be a fire walk. A walk during sunrise or sunset. Soak in the warmth of the sun. Think about passion and courage and motivation. Think about what lights you up. Or, choose a water walk. Following a creek or the ocean or a lake, or, simply noticing little puddles after the rain. The beautiful thing is that the exact same path feels completely different depending on which element you're walking with. One of my favorite practices is returning to the same path over and over throughout the year and doing a Wheel of the Year walk. We often think magic comes from discovering, someplace new, but I think some of the deepest magic comes from building a relationship with one place. Walk the same trail every month. Notice where the first wildflowers bloom in spring. Watch where the mushrooms appear after the rain. Learn which trees turn color first in autumn and where frost lingers the longest during winter. Eventually, you're not just walking a trail anymore. You are visiting an old friend, and you'll begin to notice changes that most people simply would just walk right past. Here's another fun practice. Before you leave home, think about doing a walk with the directions. Choose one of the 4 directions as your intention. Maybe today is an east walk, focusing on, new beginnings, inspiration, and possibility. Another day, walk towards the west, reflecting on endings and emotions and letting go. Walk north when you're seeking stability, wisdom, or grounding. Walk south when you're looking for joy, confidence, creativity, or some type of renewed energy. It's almost like casting a circle with your feet instead of standing in one place. You could even turn an ordinary walk into a gentle form of divination. Before you leave, ask one simple question. Then let it go. Don't spend the entire walk trying to figure out the answer. Instead, simply notice what consistently catches your attention. I don't know, maybe it's that bird that just refuses to leave your path. Maybe it's a flower blooming in an unexpected place. A feather, a fallen branch. I don't know, maybe it's not an omen at all. Maybe it's simply something that invited you to notice. When you return home, journal about whatever kept drawing your attention. Sometimes the lesson isn't in the object itself, right? It's in what your soul was ready to see that day. And finally, one that has become very, very special to me, walking with a tree. Choose a single tree. Visit it every month for an entire year. Watch how it changes through every season. Notice the bark, the leaves, the moss growing at its base, the birds that visit, the insects that make it home, and the shadows that it casts throughout the year. Before long, you'll realize you have not just been observing a tree. And I love that. It's not about collecting experiences, it's about creating relationships. So if you are feeling inspired after today's episode, don't feel like you have to try all of those. Maybe just choose one or do your own walk. Do one intentional walk this week, but walk a little slower. Notice a little bit more and see what happens when you stop expecting magic to appear and simply begin walking as though you are already a part of it. Okay, I do want to take just a minute to talk about something that isn't quite as magical, but it is incredibly important. Please remember to be safe when you take these walks. I know many of us, especially women, have learned to be aware of our surroundings, but honestly, this is good advice for everyone. If you are walking alone, let somebody know where you're going, especially if you're heading out, onto a trail or into the woods. Trust your instincts. If a place, a person, or even the energy of an area doesn't feel right, you don't need to explain it away. Simply turn around and leave. The trail will still be there another day. I would also encourage you to carry whatever safety items make you feel comfortable and are, of course, legal where you live. That might be pepper spray, a whistle, a flashlight if you're, walking at dusk. Might be simply keeping your phone charged and with you. There's no prize for being unprepared. And while we're talking about safety, let's just remember that nature deserves our respect too. Stay on marked trails whenever possible. Know the weather before you head out. Carry water and don't touch plants, mushrooms, or wildlife unless you know exactly what you're looking at. We talked about this in our poison plants and baneful magic episode. Some of the most beautiful things in nature can also be the ones that ask us to admire them from a distance. A walking witch is aware. There is nothing unspiritual about protecting yourself. In fact, I'd argue that honoring your safety, your own safety, is one of the most powerful acts of self care and self respect you can practice. Your intuition is one of your greatest magical tools. Listen to it, trust it, and let it guide you home safely every single time. And this actually reminds me of a story from when I was in my early 20s. One evening, I left my apartment to walk down to the City College football stadium. I was going to walk the track and tackle the stadium stairs for a workout. It was already dark, but I had done this walk many, many times before. I knew the route, I knew the stadium. It felt completely normal. Now, this was long before smartphones or even, I think, cell phones for that matter. I had my trusty Walkman with my plugged in headphones, listening to music as I walked. Everything felt ordinary until it didn't. About halfway to the stadium, I was stopped in my tracks. Literally. Not by a person, not by a sound, not by a voice telling me to turn around. It was something much harder to explain. The only way I've ever been able to describe it is that I was met by an overwhelming presence that simply said, "Stop. Right now. Stop." It was as if every part of my body suddenly knew that taking one more step would be the wrong decision. I could not move forward. Every instinct I had told me the exact same thing. Go home right now. I didn't stand there trying to reason with it. I didn't tell myself I was being silly. I did not try to explain it away. It was such an overwhelming, all consuming feeling. I had no choice. I listened and I turned around. Actually, I didn't just turn around, I actually ran all the way home. Even now, more than 30 years later, I can still remember that feeling so vividly. And just telling the story brings it right back. It wasn't panic ish, it definitely wasn't anxiety. It was just this deep, unmistakable knowing that something wasn't right. It was a bit fearful. Do I know what would have happened if I had kept walking? No, I don't. And honestly, I never will. Maybe nothing, maybe something. The point isn't what was waiting for me. The point is that I listened. And it was just that one night. Other nights came and went when I was, back down at the stadium working out. Same path, same routine. But that one night, I listened. Our intuition doesn't always arrive with explanations. Sometimes it simply asks us to trust it. And switches. We spend so much time trying to strengthen our intuition through meditation and divination, prayer, time in nature, all the good stuff. But all of that practice means very little if, when intuition finally does speak, we ignore it. Okay, how about a walking witch kit? You guys like that idea? Sometimes the best magical tools are the ones we discover rather than the ones we purchase. But I'll tell you, I have purchased walking sticks. I have what I actually call my little walking witch kit. And one of my favorite things in it is a pair of walking sticks that I absolutely love. Now, those are the ones I take with me on my bigger adventures, the mountain hikes and longer trails, and, the places where I know I'm going to be putting in some miles. They're dependable, sturdy, and they help keep me safe on uneven terrain. I don't think there's anything wrong with buying the tools that help you enjoy nature more comfortably and confidently. Now, along with my walking sticks, I usually carry a small day pack or even like a crossbody bag with a few essentials in it. Water is always first on the list because hydration is never an option. I usually bring a light snack in case I'm out longer than expected. My phone's always with me for emergencies, even though in the higher altitudes there's no there's no reception. For that, I usually just use it for a lot of pictures. But maybe like a couple band-aids, depending on the day and the type of hike I'm doing. Sometimes things like a whistle, bug spray, sunscreen, a flashlight, or even a lightweight rain jacket. I don't carry everything every time, but I do try to think ahead and pack for the adventure that I'm about to have. Now, if you are heading out on a longer hike instead of taking a walk around the neighborhood, let's talk about clothing for just a minute. Serious hikers don't usually dress for fashion. They dress for comfort and safety and the conditions. Layers are going to be your best friend because the weather can change quickly, especially in the mountains. You might start the morning, wearing a jacket, and then find yourself literally in a t-shirt an hour later. And then happily put that jacket right back on when the winds pick up or, I don't know, an afternoon storm rolls in. Choose comfortable, moisture wicking clothing whenever you can. Cotton feels great until it gets wet, and then it just tends to stay wet, which really leaves you feeling pretty cold and uncomfortable. Good hiking fabrics dry much more quickly and help regulate your temperature throughout the day. And don't underestimate good footwear. Whether you prefer hiking boots or trail shoes, really probably is going to depend on the terrain. But having good support and traction, oh my goodness, it makes all of the difference. Now, personally, I wear Merrell hiking boots, and I absolutely love them. Pair those with a comfortable pair of hiking socks, a good hat, sunglasses, and sunscreen, and oh my goodness, you'll be amazed at how much more enjoyable your walk becomes. The goal isn't to look like a professional hiker. The goal is to be comfortable enough that your attention stays on the beauty around you instead of, wishing your feet didn't hurt. And I know this sounds like a lot compared to our simple 5-minute neighborhood walk, but this is really good for those bigger adventures. Think of it as, creating your own walking witch kit. And the funny thing is, carrying these practical tools doesn't make your walk any less magical. If anything, I think it makes it more magical because now you're free to be present. Instead of worrying about what you forgot or what might go wrong, your attention can settle in on the birds and the trees and the flowers, the changing weather, and all of those little moments of wonder that make each walk unique. Another thing that you'll almost always find tucked into my bag is some type of, like, maybe a little glass jar, a little cloth pouch, even a zipper bag. Not because I'm planning to collect everything I see, but every once in a while, the earth offers a gift that is just meant to come home with you. Maybe it is a feather lying in the middle of the trail, a perfectly smooth stone that fits in your hand, an acorn, a pine cone, a shell from the beach, whatever it is, something that's fallen naturally to the forest floor. Having a small container just keeps those treasures safe until I get home. Somehow it makes receiving them a little more intentional. And when I get home, I love emptying that little jar or pouch onto my table and then looking at everything again. And those little items just bring me back to that walk. Later, I can remember the trail, the weather, what I was thinking about, and sometimes even the lesson I learned that day. Sometimes those treasures find their way into my workings, and, sometimes they just stay together in the little jar that they came home in, becoming a tiny collection of memories instead of magical ingredients. Just remember, let nature decide what is a gift. Gather only what has, already been given freely. A feather that has been shed, a branch that has already fallen, a shell left behind, or, a stone resting on the path. Leave living plants and nests and flowers and wildlife exactly as you found them so the magic remains for the next person and really for nature itself. Over the years, I've found that, those little jars end up holding so much more than the feathers and stones that I find. They end up holding the memories. And years later, when you pick up that feather or that little pine cone, you won't just remember what you found. You are going to remember who you were when you found it. Okay, business witches, what does being a walking witch have to do with business? Well, guess what? Maybe more than anything else we've talked about today. When we are faced with a difficult problem at work, our first instinct is usually to stay at our desks, right? We stare at the computer screen, we reread the email for the ninth time, we make another cup of coffee and convince ourselves that, gosh, if we just think a little harder, the answer will magically appear. But how often does that actually work? Some of my best ideas have never come while sitting at my desk. They've arrived while walking. Sometimes it is a walk through the mountains. Sometimes it's a walk around my neighborhood or down the street from the office. The moment I stop forcing the answer, my mind finally has room to find it. I even encourage you to have what I call walking meetings with yourself. Before you head out, choose a topic. Maybe it's a difficult employee conversation. Maybe it's a client issue, a business decision, or a project that you've been stuck on. Then leave the office and go for a walk. Don't try to solve it with every step. Just carry the question with you like we've talked about. Notice the world around you. breathe, let your thoughts wander naturally. More often than not, you will return with a fresh perspective. Maybe not the complete answer, but enough clarity to know what your next step should be. Another business witch idea that I've grown to love: try taking one of your employees or coworkers for a walk instead of sitting across from each other in a conference room. There is something different that happens when two people are walking shoulder to shoulder instead of sitting face to face across a desk. It doesn't feel quite so formal. It doesn't feel like one person is on one side and the other person is on the other side. Instead, you're both headed in the same direction. I think psychologists have actually studied this. They found that walking side by side can make conversations feel less confrontational. Without the constant pressure of, direct eye contact, people often relax a little bit more, open up a little bit easier, and are more willing to share what's really on their minds. Even more interesting, we naturally begin matching each other's pace as we walk. And that simple act of moving together helps build trust, connection, and cooperation. It's almost as if your bodies begin working as a team before your minds even realize it. Obviously, not just good in the business world. This works wonderfully as parents too. But you know what? For the next time, or when you have a one on one meeting or a coaching conversation, or you need to brainstorm an idea, consider leaving the office for 20 minutes. Walk around the block, walk through a park, walk around your building. You might be surprised by what gets said when no one is staring across a desk. Sometimes the best conversations happen on the path walked. I truly believe creativity does not like to be cornered. The harder we chase it, the farther it seems to run. But when we create space, when we step away from the desk, quiet the noise, and let our minds move at the same pace as our feet, our ideas have room to catch up with us. Sometimes I think the most productive thing you can do for your business isn't answering another email or checking one more thing off of your list. I truly believe the most productive thing you can do is go for a walk. One thing we don't talk about very often is what happens after the walk. Whether it's a quick walk around the block, a purposeful walk like, one with the elements, or a business walk and, a talk with your staff. The walk doesn't really end when you step back through the front door. In many ways, that's when the magic begins settling in. When I come home from a walk, especially one in the mountains, I do not rush right back into things. If I can help it, I like to give myself a few quiet minutes just to transition. Sometimes I'll make a fresh cup of lemonade and just simply sit outside for a little while. Sometimes I'll empty my little pouch of treasures onto the table and just look at each one again. It's amazing how quickly they bring the walk, just rushing right back. If I received a feather, I will often take a few moments and clean it gently and place it on my altar. If I found an interesting stone, I might add it to a bowl that I've collected over the years. Sometimes a pine cone or a little piece of bark becomes part of my seasonal decorations. And every once in a while, something has to become part of a spell or, finds its way into my grimoire. Sometimes I'll just spend a few minutes writing. Nothing fancy, really, just a sentence or two. What did I notice today? What surprised me? What did I receive an answer for? Or maybe a better question, what felt different? You don't need to write pages and pages. Even one sentence begins creating a beautiful record of your relationship with the places that you love. Imagine reading those journals, 5 or 10 years from now. You're going to remember, right? You'll remember where you walked, but more importantly, you'll remember who you were becoming at the time. And don't forget to say thank you, because Earth needs your gratitude, but because gratitude changes us. A quiet thank you to the trail, the trees, the birds, the creek, the ocean, whatever place welcomed you that day, it completes the conversation. We often think of magic as asking, right? Asking for guidance or signs or blessings. But some of our more powerful magic simply comes from saying thank you. Thank you for walking with me today. Because isn't that really what just happened, right? You didn't just walk through nature. Nature walked with you. Well, speaking of all this walking, I'm going to head out for another mountain walk myself right now. So, as we close our walk together today, I hope you remember this. You don't have to climb a mountain to become a walking witch. You don't need miles of forest, expensive hiking gear, or, I don't know, a passport to somewhere wild. I think you simply need the willingness to step outside, slow your pace, and notice. Notice the seasons changing around you. Notice the birds that share your morning. Notice the trees that stand watch over your neighborhood. Notice the way the earth has been patiently waiting for you to look up from your busy life and remember that you belong here. Because I think that's what a walking witch really is. Not someone who walks the farthest, not someone who finds the rarest feather or, the most magical staff. A walking witch is someone who chooses relationship over routine. Someone who understands that every path has something to teach. Every season has something to offer, and every walk is an opportunity to come home, not just to your house, but to yourself. So this week, I have a little invitation for you. Lace up your shoes, step outside, and take just one intentional walk. Leave your expectations at home, walk a little slower, breathe a little deeper, let the earth introduce itself to you once again. Who knows? Maybe you'll discover that you've been a walking witch all along. Well, I do have a poem for today, and of course, the moon update for this week. I'm going to go grab those notes, and I will be right back. All right, I've got the poem, and it goes: The Walking Witch. Step by step, I find my way. Breath by breath, I greet the day. Hill and hollow, stone and stream, nothing's ever quite as it may seem. Leaf by leaf, the forest speaks. Week by week, the spirit seeks. Root by root, I learn to grow. Slow by slow, I come to know. The wind may wander, the rivers flow. The oldest paths still seem to know. The trail may bend, the light may shift. Each quiet walk becomes a gift. So, heart to earth and sky above, I walk in wonder, I walk in love. And when at last I journey home, I find I never walked alone. Okay, let's see. As this episode airs on Wednesday, August 19th, we will be under a beautiful first quarter moon. And you guys know, a new moon is when we plant our intentions, we dream, we imagine, we begin. But the first quarter moon asks something different of us. It says, okay, what's your next step? What are we doing with those seeds you planted last week? Not the whole journey, just your next step. And isn't that the perfect moon for today's conversation? So this week, I have a little walking witch challenge for all of us. Choose one intention that you've been carrying around. Maybe it's a project you've been putting off, a healthier habit you've been meaning to begin, difficult conversation you've been avoiding, a dream you've been waiting for the right time to start. Now, instead of sitting back and thinking about it, go for a walk. Before you leave home, though, say your intention out loud. Then don't spend the entire walk trying to solve it. Just walk and breathe and listen. Let your feet carry your thoughts forward. When you come home, ask yourself just one question. What is my very next step? Just the next one. Because that's how every path begins, isn't it? One step, one choice, one walk at a time. Okay, let's see. Next week, oh my gosh. We are doing our annual goal check-in. Or maybe I should call it goals better late than never. Normally, this is an episode I would put together sometime around June-ish. Certainly not at the end of August. But you know what? I'd much rather revisit my goals a little late than not revisit them at all. And I don't know, maybe some of you guys are right there with me. Life has a funny way of rearranging our plans. Before we know it, the months have slipped by. We've been putting out fires and taking care of everyone else, and suddenly we're wondering where the year went. So this year, instead of pretending like everything has gone according to plan, I'm going to lean into it with you. We are going to take an honest look at where we are, of course, celebrate what we've accomplished, forgive ourselves for what we haven't, and then use a little witchcraft to help us finish these last 4 months of 2026 with purpose. Because I don't know about you, but I need some good, solid spell work to help me finish my goals. Until then, though, I hope you have a great rest of your week and an amazing weekend. I will talk with you next week.
Thank you for joining me today at Witchy Work Wishes, a place to find your weekly inspiration for bringing your personal witchcraft practice into your business, work, and office. For more information and additional content, please visit me online at witchyworkwishes.com. If you want to send me a personal note, please email me at info@witchyworkwishes.com. And of course, you can follow me on Instagram and Facebook. Just search for Witchy Work Wishes.